So, hey, everyone watching. Yeah, we're going to give a couple more minutes for people to trickle in. Happy Friday, by the way. And as I was just talking to these fine young gentlemen about just now, despite whatever little bits here and there of like, drama or whatever, disagreements, this last year, I would say almost like after a few drama waves were dealt with, has been one of the most cohesive worlds and communities I've seen in a very long time. There was always this like tension, like since 2016, I guess, when I started kind of bumping around the community, there was always this tension, whether people had community versus DCG tension, or whether it's between competing proposal owners during the 2017 onward like DAO boom, the money, the making it rain boom, and they're just a bunch of it's like mistrust and like jockeying for things. There's a lot more of that like stuff, and maybe it's just because the community sort of like contracted after the money went away, and then there's less to go around. But I just think that a lot of the existing actors are all kind of more on the same page. Like, for example, I noticed for my own personal self, I had some more controversial dealings or opinions with Ryan Gull of the Incubator in the past. And, we've moved very much past that now, where I'd call ourselves like 100% on the same team pretty much. And same thing with, DCG I was always friendly with, but there was always like some, there was some like, some frustration, some like feelings of I wasn't being told everything. Like, and now I just feel like it's back to part of the family, So that's my positive note for this whole thing.
Did you have something to add to that, Troy? I had a comment.
I think it's dramatically better. You couldn't get people to agree that apple pie and motherhood are good. So we still have the occasional trolls, but it's so much better.
In the software world, we've long had this saying that developers would rather share a toothbrush than share agreement, even on like mundane stuff, right? So crypto is largely an extension and overlap with software, so just kind of used to that. But yeah, that rancor had gotten pretty bad. I will say that it's been a concerted effort on the part of a lot of people to contribute to that. The trust protectors and DCG a year ago had to make up. I mean, you'll remember that, Joel, and Troy may have paid attention to that just as a community member at that time. But we just had to kind of call a truce, and the trust protectors made some missteps, and we said as much, and there were literal apologies, not giving up our role to oversee the DCG board, but if we made mistakes, we said so. But then we kind of like on both sides, we said, look, everyone just cool it. I mean, get it together here. We're all adults, and both sides really made a concerted effort. DCG and the heads there. Of course, we had an almost entirely new crop of trust protectors, but that was going to be a baton that was handed over anyway, and it was passed. Like that message did go from last year's class to this year's. And then we got really cool cats in the mix, like Troy, who's unflappable and will never lose his cool. So it makes all the difference in the world. You got the right set of personalities in the room. So,
yeah, I would definitely call Troy the anti George Donnelly. That's a name we haven't heard for a long time, huh?
I spent a lot of time trying to keep that team productive and on the rails, and I wear it as a pride thing that he kicked me off the team because he just couldn't stand the accountability.
Yeah, he couldn't stand the niceness,
And, too much, like
too much Ned Flanders for him, just just all that stuff. It is pretty funny. All right, we're 6 minutes in. Let me just see where Ash is watching for sure. Hi, Ash. There's a few other people.
Hey, Dr. Francis.
And then anyone else wants to chime in, let me know. I think I'll maybe wait a couple more minutes. People tend to trickle in, take a little bit longer.
And I could post the link on Reddit if anybody wanted to join us, right?
Yeah, well, the thing is, Reddit's not like the problem with Reddit's not like a current events, like a happening, kind of thing. It's not like you post it and people. It's more like you post it and then people read it within the next hour, 2 or 3. It's not like Twitter, which is like instant. Which, by the way, if you go to my Twitter and you can retweet me right now, because I tweeted from both. I used the Dash community Twitter also to retweet it, but I retweeted them more live. So
I'll just throw it up there and see if somebody wanders in.
Yeah, I have to say the link to this video on Reddit, which I posted a couple days ago, is downvoted to almost nothing for reasons. So if you want to throw a fresh one up there and maybe give it a second go, that'd be nice. Yeah, let's see.
All right, I just retweeted you.
Thank you. I feel like a wannabe influencer begging people to, please like and retweet,
Yeah, right.
And I bet there's a certain individual who's out there, look at this pathetic scum begging for retweets. And anyway, there's always that. All right, I think that's enough banter. It's 8 minutes in. Let's actually roll the intro and then get back into this. Well, hey guys, gals, and non-binary pals, as I want to say, happy Friday. Welcome to the newest edition of the Dash Podcast 201. And I'm joined by the only in the world Dash Trust Protectors. Well, you're not the only ones on there, but you're the ones who aren't camera shy. Solar Guy and Patrick, aka I am Sigmund. How's it going?
All right.
Yes.
Good to be with you again.
Yeah.
Other than the after party, this is the second coolest place to be on a Friday afternoon.
Listen, we're going to have that too. Don't worry about that. And before anyone tries to bring it up, no, I am not cosplaying as Patrick today. We came with the same relative like hair and, sweater, black sweater on our own. So it must be that, and headphones, right? The whole look. Buy this look for only $28 or whatever. It just happened to be a coincidence. Yes, please retweet this look. So before we dive into just stuff in general, I'd like to remind you guys, if you are in my Discord, you can go to the Dash Podcast channel at any time, and I'll put that little super chat up on the screen instantly. Also, if you're in the Dash Discord, you can go poke over into the AMA Podcast Questions channel and throw some extra questions in there. And obviously, if you throw me some Ds on cointr.ee/the Desert Lakes, then yeah, I'll put that up on the screen too, especially if you complain in the regular YouTube live chat, hey, it's not showing up, I gave you some money, and then I'll take your word for it, and then we'll go. So, all that stuff, all the orders of business taken care of. Let me just start and, go from there. So, first off, the DAO Irrevocable Trust has been around for a while, for a few years, and it's kind of like a lot of new institutions in the radically new world of DAOs. It's kind of been in search of its place, of its role. And initially, it's supposedly a thing to keep, for example, Dash Core Group in check, or I don't say in check, but like act as a counterbalance, kind of monitor things like that. For a while, it seemed like the Trust Protectors, from an outside perspective, maybe were like just kind of like showing up to meetings, being talked to, and just saying, all right, and then it ended up being that certain people within the Trust Protectors took a more adversarial and whistleblower type role. And there's just a lot of stuff that has gone on since then. So what is the modern role of the Dash Trust Protectors? What do you guys do these days?
You go first, Patrick.
Yes. Right. So there is kind of the practical role that you mentioned. Then there's the legal role. This is pretty innovative in terms of legal structure. So, An irrevocable trust means that it's not revocable, duh, but revocable by whom? So that means revocable by the grantor. So whoever granted the assets to the trust can't take it back, right? So it's permanent, except under really rare circumstances. In this case, the asset that was granted by a DCG management, and it was the shares of the corporation. And so the shares of the corporation were granted into an irrevocable trust. That's important because the only people who can control the board of directors of a U.S. corporation are the shareholders. So the shares were granted into this trust. The trustee actually then becomes the single shareholder or representative of the shareholders. And then this trust protector thing was added into the mix. As advisors, one of the things that we've done a lot of over the past few months, a lot of this in Q4, was to really dig in and clarify exactly the details of this structure. Like, what does it really translate to in terms of legal role and legal obligations and all that good stuff? We worked a lot with the trustee on clarifying that, also with DCG's corporate counsel. So we really did spruce up our information on that. We're in the process of like documenting this and then updating the materials in the community about this, so that it's all brought current and so forth. So all of that is just the legal structure. So to try and state it in 10 seconds, the trust protectors advise the trustee, which is the shareholder in control of the shares of the DCG corporation, which is to say in control of the board of directors, and the board of directors in turn is supposed to be in charge of the overall operation and governance of DCG itself and its activities. So the legal structure is a done deal. And we've actually kind of tested it a little bit. So we had to reorganize the DCG board in Q4. We were a little late in doing that, truth be told. So we actually then, it's like, until you've exercised some of these contractual clauses or legal arrangements, you're not totally sure that they're set right and that they work. But we did that, and it's working. So that's positive. That's just all of the sort of legal role of or setup of the DAO Irrevocable Trust and DCG as the corporation involved in that trust, and then the trust protectors as protectors of those shares and of the trust and the corporation. Now, then there's the practical role. Like, well, what are these humans who are called trust protectors? What are they actually doing on a month-to-month basis? And that is evolving, and we're constantly pushing the envelope on that and trying to expand what we're doing, figure out exactly the right relationship with DCG, the rhythms and the processes of that relationship. How often do we meet? What does the reporting consist of? All that good stuff. So anyway, to fast forward to a concise answer, everyone knows by now that I'm not great at concise answers, but it is a little complicated in fairness. The modern role, I love the question, what's the modern role? Like, the whole thing is going on just 5 years old, right? And we invented it all, right? I've not heard of an exact structure like this anywhere else in terms of the way we did it. There are all kinds of foundations in crypto, and there are other DAOs and that kind of stuff, but ours is really unique and really interesting, and it's this really cool fusion of conventional legal structure and then modern crypto governance. Anyway, the whole thing is kind of modern and cutting edge, but the modern role of the trust protectors is that it's to fulfill this legal obligation that we have, which is really based on U.S. corporate law, although a lot of this is very similar in other parts of the world too. And then the practical role is to protect the interests of Dash, the interests of the masternodes, primarily focused on DCG as a corporation that we're involved in, but for the Dash community and the network as a whole. I think there's a question later on about what else can the trust protectors do, so we'll come back to that. Anyway, Troy, you got anything to add to that or subtract?
Or multiply.
Oh, I think Troy is
yeah, you muted yourself.
Help Dash win. That's
Help
it.
dash win.
Help dash win.
Yeah, I think that's a great kind of overall perspective. And as we're talking in the the kind of free chat portion and before the official intro and stuff, it's kind of a more cohesive community now that it's sort of slimmed out. And so, yeah, the make dash win is kind of a good thing. So there's a bunch of questions all over the map, and I think that a lot of them are trust related specifically, but some of them are just like, questions. So this one was, in what month, this was from Twitter, by the way, in what month will Dash platform enter the main network? And I added in the IE when Evo. So this is something that we've been asking Sam, Quantum Explorer, a lot. And we have different answers depending on the time. Obviously things get the expectation set forth, or the guess was right before the end of the year last year, right? We'll have a release candidate 1 ready for rigorous testing for a couple months and then release. Release candidate 1, as far as I know, is not out yet. Do you guys have any special visibility as trust protectors that someone like me, some like rando on the internet, whatever, does not necessarily know?
Yes. Take it away, Patrick.
When Evo, Patrick,
Right.
You should know.
Right. Yeah, we should know. I agree with that. We should know. One of the disciplines that was a little lacking with regard to platform was a data-driven project planning system. We had some parts of it, but it wasn't really robust. So when I got involved in the interim CEO role, that was top priority. And that's been in place since mid to late summer last year. It's not a perfect solution, but it's you got to have something, and it's got to be data driven. There's no way. Platform is really complicated. There's lots of dependencies, not just technical dependencies, but human resource dependencies, right? This person's out of the office next week, or out of the office today, or this person's waiting on that person's commit, or et cetera, et cetera. There's no way you can just hold that in your head or try to sketch it on some kind of a weak project planning tool, like list it all out in a spreadsheet or something. So there is a data-driven planning system in place. Balash Bezi inside DCG has been doing yeoman's work managing that. Brian Foster has helped. I contributed some to that. So such as it is, what our system is telling us is that platform is slated to go live on mainnet, That's the other thing. We've got to be very specific, right? So a release candidate on testnet, beta on testnet, releases on devnet. Those are all very different things, right? So I noticed that a lot of the phrases are just kind of kicked around, and sometimes they're used interchangeably. So we try to zero in on production software, as we call it in the software world. That means platform live on mainnet, right? Because obviously, until you're live, until you're running production software, you're not. It's just kind of by definition, right? You're not live. You haven't finished the job. Mm-hmm. So what the planning system is telling us right now is May to be live on mainnet. Now, speaking of being data-driven, there are lots of yellow flags, at least, in what the planning system is telling us. There are known unknowns, right? So there's some of that. A good planning system in software always tries to assess that. How unknown are the known unknowns? But along with that, you're always trying to attach confidence ratings to the estimates that you're making. Software estimation is really hard, especially when you're working on hard stuff. So, okay, fine. But let's quantify that. Let's quantify the uncertainty. So in other words, you'll have medium confidence ratings or low confidence ratings or even no confidence ratings. That's the thing. So there is a fair amount of low confidence in that estimate in the various parts that make up platform. And then there are the known unknowns, but then there's the real trouble, which is the unknown unknowns, right? Which by definition are not known at this point. We have a pretty sizable, you mentioned it a second ago, testing phase. I believe it's now extended beyond 2 months on the calendar. And there's a lot of work that's going to be done in there. And there are a lot of problems that are going to be found. So to the extent that there are unknown unknowns, that's where we're going to find them, and their impact is also unknown. So that's where the best guess right now is May, to be live on mainnet, but we are watching that really, really closely with DCG. We're talking about it constantly. So that's all we can do at this point.
Yeah,
My
I
impression,
believe.
if I
Yeah.
could just add a little bit, as a non-technical, non-developer person, what I have seen through Trust Protector information is that we have an order of magnitude more detail about everything that has to happen before it can go live. And so this is the best estimate we've ever had based on the data, but it's still an estimate.
Yeah. It's so I harken back to the bright eye bushy tail years of 2017 when it wasn't May, but it was the following month. It was June. June 2018 was going to be the Evo month. So, I mean, give or take
But at the
5 years.
time,
Give or take 5 years, we're on target,
yeah, so that was a mistake. I mean, hindsight's 2020, right? But embarking upon such a comprehensive all-in-one release was a mistake. We should have been more iterative and rapid release oriented. And there's an effort to get back to that. Sam's working on it. The whole team's working on it. We will get back to that. We have to, because you can't continue to try to work on these overwhelmingly large releases, especially in general. That's a difficult thing to do. But in our particular situation, with the manpower that we have and the money that we have, it's just a showstopper. Anyway, but the problem too is that there was approximately zero what I would consider professional grade software planning that went into those early estimates, and zero quantification, right? I as best I can tell, there was zero. It's just best guess estimates by some of the folks involved in the planning of it, developers and so forth. But obviously, those were way off. So, so we're in better shape now, but we do still have some unknowns that we're dealing with.
Yeah, that makes sense. May, June, yeah. That's one of those things where this is where it could extend to like a fantastic number of things where it could, like, what platform is, how it could take shape is kind of very much sort of up in the air. And I think it's kind of interesting. I like playing the what if game as like a creativity exercise, a side narrative. Does not have bearing on today. And as long as we keep that in mind, we should be there. But the what if game is like, what if things had been more iterative? It's like, okay, well, I think that Dash's market position would be significantly better today. And like if we'd been like, all right, let's just do an iterative release of like a basic username setup. That all it is just a basic little bit of data that resolves to someone's XPub key, and just does a new address whenever you send it. And it's just, that's it. And then what happens if you add a little thing here? What happens if you focused on trustless masternode shares first instead of other things? And then now you got this like crazy data platform, which in some cases, I'm wondering what the value proposition is going to be at the end of the day instantly, because a lot of people have just said like, great, can it do these 5 things? It's like, well, we need smart contracts for that. So the answer is kind of no, but then it sounds like adding basic smart contract functionality should be relatively easy afterwards. That's what I've heard as well. But so here's the thing. This is the other thing that I don't think we can ignore is Dash was a ragtag group of just a couple of like community developers making very little money. And then the 2017 boom happened under the Ryan Taylor administration, so to speak. And a lot of money went everywhere. And I don't really feel that lack of money too much today. Like, I kind of feel like Dash at $100 to $200 today is equivalent, as far as treasury spending capacity, is equivalent to Dash at 1,000 before, just because like where does that go to? the current, and Sam has mentioned this in a bunch of different public forums, where it seems like the quality of delivery being achieved by this small, lean team seems to be orders of magnitude greater than before. And so I almost wonder if Dash would have just ended up as if it had released iteratively, if it could have possibly ended up like another, not to bash, like EOS or Solana or something, flush with cash, doing new stuff all the time, but like just kind of like bloated and directionless, not lean and focused. And I feel like the lean and focus of poverty, for whatever it is, has kind of made Dash a lot better. And now we just need to just be not quite so poor. But like maybe Evo, as it were, is going to be really fantastic now that it's going to be out soon, and which I've been saying for years, but whatever. It's going to be out soon. And then hopefully we get like a bull market pop with some stuff and then can put money into efficient means rather than inefficient means. And obviously I do think that more money is going to mean more inefficiency, unfortunately, just is what it is. However, for example, I do know that the Brave browser ad campaign that I've been running is like outperforming most of Brave's internal like benchmarks for their own things. And so it seems like we figured out that a good way to just throw excess money, once we have extra products to advertise, extra things, now we're starting to get like our promotional thing where now like our poor selves are starting to earmark in efficient ways of spending money we don't have. But at some point we might have that money, in which case, yeah. All right, let me try to boot this guy here. Anyway, carry on in the meantime.
Yeah, we're not going back. We're not going back to undisciplined spending and lack of focus in our roadmap and lack of user-focused, product-driven development. We're just not going back. That focus that you talk about, that focus will get sharper throughout 2023, because for now we do have a money crunch, and we are getting more ROI. A lot of that has to do with rehiring and reorganization. Sam, obviously, that was his first focus when he stepped in as CTO. 80% of the team or something like that, and so that's a lot. That's a lot of change on any team, but in particular for what platform was and where it was in its development and all that. So, I agree with what you're saying there. I think we're going to see more of that focus for sure. But man, come hell or high water, we cannot go back to even as things improve, right? And the price improves and we get a little bit more flush, we just can't go back.
Yeah.
That's not how I would choose to get smarter about how to handle money, but it's what happened. So, and now we're smarter about how to handle money. So this is where we are.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, the diff also went through, which it would be great to have the diff supervisors on at some point in the future, but the diff also went through their own interesting period of just, well, what are we supposed to do? What are we spending money on? Oh, we only operate during bull markets. Because like the diff didn't get enough money during the bull market to really have money for the bear market, Although in some of these investments, right? I mean, some of them have done quite well. For example, I mean, I don't know any specifics, and it's probably for the best that I don't know any specifics, but it seems like Ionia/Craypay probably has more employees than Dash right now. His is around I think around 60 or so employees. So like they're doing quite well, or they're at least growing quite rapidly. I see their stuff. I interviewed Marshall the other day, and like about a week I'm going to put out the thing. But they're working on some crazy things too, and like that is one of those shining examples of the diff getting things right. But then again, we have the opportunity to try again with more capital in the future. And, who knows, maybe it'll be a diff decision that on some of these strategic investments and that did not kind of turn out like Ionia, where it's like you're advancing a partnership into a very valuable thing in the future. Or it might be something like, say, a Valkyrie, where it's like, well, okay, maybe it paid off, but it did not expand the Dash ecosystem, that you get to divest in a way which either gets you in somewhere else or pumps the price in some way that gets people all excited, and then the devs get more money and all this kind of stuff. About one last thing about the money thing before we move on that. I've been happy to see a lot of the non-DCG parts of the Dash ecosystem stepping up over the last couple of years, with, like, for example, the incubator taking the lead on Thorchain, which is now kind of morphed into the Maya kind of integration, and all getting to work on Electrum, getting to work on AnyPay and other stuff like that. But also like CrowdNode taking a big step up and becoming a valuable kind of thing. And in that vein of that, I'd like to help out some community members in a series of every other month decision proposals on improving Dash, which, like, right now we got the Evo name one that's up right now, which I think is kind of interesting. But I'd like to, hopefully, by the end of this year, explore a decision proposal on a reallocation that increasingly favors masternodes over miners, as well as a 20% treasury. I think those would be good things to happen. The personal opinions here, right? And that's why the masternodes can just say no if they want to. I'm like, all right, never mind. But to basically giving more avenues for staking income for new people buying Dash, as well as giving the treasury, the startup capital portion of the Dash network's funding, much more like flexibility to actually pay more developers, hire, put out more marketing, all that kind of stuff. And then at some point when that's done well enough, people can just not spend the whole 20%, spend 12%, spend 8%, whatever, and it just contracts. And yeah, that would be fun. So, big long ramble on that.
Amen.
So first off, I think it's a huge improvement that we switched the cost of putting up a proposal from 5 Dash to 1 Dash. Mm-hmm. I've been, since forever, a huge proponent of more and better communication, and this is that the proposal system with a small price tag, I think, is going to be a substantial tool in that toolbox.
It was funny. I knew this guy in December of 2017. It was like 3 to 5 days before. It was like 3 or 4 days before the proposal deadline for that month, and that's when Dash was like $1,200-$1,500 a coin. And he just says, "Hey man, I got this cool idea for like a Dash proposal. I'm going to put in a proposal." And I'm like, "Okay, well, it's like a day before. Like, let me read it first. Let's try to introduce you to the community." He's like, "Too late. I already submitted the proposal." I'm like, "What?" And then like within like a couple hours, there's like 400 downvotes. He's like, "Oh well, I tried my." I'm just like, you just blew like $6,000 to $7,000 just for nothing. Like, what the heck? And at least with a 1 Dash proposal fee, that case would have been better.
Yeah.
And by the way, hi Peter. Peter of CrowdNode is in the chat, so just saying hi.
Shout outs to CrowdNode. They have done so much for the Dash community.
Yes, I made some possibly annoying jokes about Marshall Standard Time, about the delivery schedule versus estimates of like Ionia's stuff. But CrowdNode Standard Time, they're on like the trains run on time, like it's pretty crazy. So the next question here, this is more specifically it's for all you guys. After Patrick stepped down as interim DCG CEO, are the Trust Protectors still in search for a permanent Dash Core Group CEO?
So I'll give the speed answer. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little more sophisticated than that, though. There's different ways you can search for high caliber personnel like that. So one way is you can hire a headhunter firm that specializes in crypto stuff, and that is not inexpensive. So we are not doing that. But there's a lot of groundwork that has to happen before we get to that step where we have to write a job description. And so Patrick is, really push that message home at DCG, we need to have accurate job descriptions. And I'm sure he has stuff to add about that as well. But the short answer is yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We made some contacts at the Moonclave conference specific to crypto headhunting that was in Aspen in August. But when we just sized it up, you got to put your best foot forward especially if you're going to pay for retained search. It's really expensive, and there's been serious inflation in a lot of those professional services offerings too, especially those that tap into labor markets, because the labor markets are still so weird. So we cannot afford to throw a bunch of money at something that either produces the wrong candidate or doesn't produce a candidate. So there's just a whole lot of planning that has to go into that. I obviously had that really close inside look in the interim CEO spot for 3 months. So a lot of information gathered, and we've been working on the job description. And as Troy said, we've been searching, but we're not hitting the gas pedal on that just yet. That's kind of part of just overall recruiting. We're not hitting the gas pedal on recruiting overall. We need to recruit more independent board members as well. It's a really important priority, but there again, it's a difficult recruiting environment, all things considered. So we're mostly in maintenance mode. We can talk more about it if you want. We went through a lot of stabilization of DCG. It's always, especially for more recent trust protector thinking and philosophy, is the stability of DCG is always the top priority. So whether it has to do with scandal and rancor in the community, or financial problems, or legal fiduciary problems like the lack of sitting board members, it's always our top focus. So we put a lot of focus on that, especially in Q4. In the course of a calendar year, the entire C-suite exited DCG little by little, right? Starting with Bob Carroll, the CTO. Based on the way that this board was organized, that also meant that we were down to a single sitting board member, legally speaking. Big problem.
Look at me. I am the board now.
Yeah. Big trouble, right? For all kinds of reasons, right? Concentration of power, fiduciary stewardship, and all that good stuff. Anyway, we got that part stabilized, but that was like the big recruiting effort of Q4. And anyway, so we're keeping an eye on the other recruiting efforts too, but for the most part, we're just making sure that we're stable, and then keeping an eye on what the delivery schedule looks like for platform, and then we'll be able to know what decisions to make from there on out.
Yes, and of course, money is always good with all this. We're ready to pay people like
help.
a CEO.
And we would also appeal to the Dash community. Before you know it, it'll be time for elections for trust protectors, and we're interested in thoughtful, motivated people that care about Dash.
Mm-hmm. And also who aren't super stretched thin and doing other things. Well, although maybe that's all you got.
Yeah. Same thing for the DCG board. Let's put the word out today. Anyone who wants to do a lot of hard work for little money, and by little I mean none, we're not compensating board members yet. We need it. We need objective outsiders who can really roll up sleeves and contribute to helping DCG as a corporation get to the next level. So please send us your resumes, get in touch with us. Oh, that's an important detail. Did Troy send you the new website, Joel?
Maybe, but I think I went there on my own earlier. Because
www.trust.org. It's the Trust Protector's first ever official web presence.
Nice. Yeah, I see since the last time, because I got the logo for a screenshot of that little Starry Dash logo for the thumbnail of this video. So that much there. What I can see now is actually I'm just going to I might as well actually put it up on the screen. Let me actually see if I'm set up to do that right now. Maybe not. Okay, whatever. But you can just go. It's just a website. You can go there.
Yeah.
One thing I do know. Just make sure you get rid of all those the old Dash logo on all these bits.
A lot of pirated intellectual property, their images especially. But yeah. But the point is, this is now going to be the place to go to get in touch with us, to ask questions, to complain, etc. So more coming soon.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds good. So next order of business. Do you work with DCG management on changes and improvements in the delivery process because of the very low predictability and reliability of the current setup? If yes, what are the changes you propose and work on? If not, are you planning to do that, and possibly when?
So I'll give the speed answer, then Patrick can really flesh that out. So historically, that's been the biggest weakness to the sort of homegrown, in your garage, the start of the Dash programming team, the dev team. It wasn't professional, was not professional. It was amazing. Evan was a genius. It was not professional. So yeah, a lot of effort to make it more professional. And I'm sure Patrick can flesh that out in 10 different ways.
Yeah, it's constant. It's a constant process, but it's a balancing act, right? So especially when I was in the interim CEO role, this is the point of a CEO, is to orchestrate everyone to be rowing in the same direction towards the right stuff, right? And not towards an iceberg. So the one practical thing that we could actually accomplish was a data-driven roadmap and an associated delivery schedule. So that's in place, but the more change that you implement, the more disruption you're going to have. So we had to make judgment calls about what not to change and what to leave as is. So we've also left a lot as is. So that's the yes and no answer. Over time, though, it is something that we're watching really, really closely. In particular, so I'm not the interim CEO any longer, but just to make sure everyone's up to speed, I'm a voting member sitting on the DCG board of directors. That's also the first time that's ever happened, that a trust protector has actually had a dual role as a voting member of the board of directors. As far as I'm aware, it's the first time that a trust protector was involved in the DCG board in any capacity, because of course the board oversees the organization. Everyone reports to the board. The board's supposed to hire and fire at least the CEO, but possibly, all the executives and all the leadership. So that started with just an observational role a year ago, in February of 2022. And then that evolved through to the interim CEO role, and then now to a voting member of the DCG board. In any case, that's not the CEO role, but it does give me a pretty much constant daily, weekly insight into the operations at DCG. So that's one of the ways that we're watching and observing and learning about what to do next. So yes, we are constantly looking for more changes and improvements to make. Another one is a performance management system, a formal goal setting and measurement system for results, right? Doesn't exist. And it's really hard to do, and you can screw things up if you do this wrong, right? Everyone hates it. It doesn't measure the right things, but there are a lot of really good. You shouldn't bash the whole effort, right? There are a lot of good goal setting, alignment, performance management systems, and that's definitely a top priority. But here again, you have to have certain things in place, and you got to do this the right way, or otherwise it's just going to be a mess. So that's another area where, yes, we've identified changes to make. No, we're not just like bowling forward and trying to impose stuff, because the disruption risk is too great right now. We're trying to just stay focused.
And huge shout out to Quantum Explorer, Sam, for being so forthcoming once he became, Chief Technology Officer. It was a huge improvement. And the structural change of having a trust protector on the DCG board. I mean, that's, I think, a huge part of why we have more and better communication and just less chaos because of, poor information transfer.
Yeah, and we're going to get to one of those things soon, but the dual role is kind of an interesting role because the board runs DCG and the trust protectors kind of run the board, right? Are supposed to be able to, remove board members if need be and things like that. And kind of the dual role does sort of bring up a thought that has been communicated before, which is why have a board and a trust? Why not have all trust protectors immediately automatically become board members and just kind of skip that layer of bureaucracy?
Yeah, and I've heard that same suggestion, and I think that we can have both, and there are advantages to having both, but without the extra bureaucratic layer and the inefficiencies you get from that. So there's also supposed to be this line between the trust protectors and the operations of DCG. That's kind of written into the arrangement, even from the very earliest writings about it, like Ryan's detailed writings. But where you draw that line is not blatantly obvious, and it can change over time, right? So just based on circumstances. So ideally, though, DCG, just like any corporation, should have a really strong independent board that makes sure that the corporation delivers results, right? That's the reporting accountability to the board. Now, I think there's still really interesting advantages for having the trust protectors available, in particular because they are directly elected by the masternodes. So that is a modern crypto governance relationship, right? Which you wouldn't have if you just had a regular corporate board. You have like votes and meetings and annual meetings and general assemblies and all that. But I like the fact that the trust protector entity is directly accountable in the form of voting to the masternodes. So that's unique. And I think there's some other advantages then to having the trust protectors as a kind of board over the board. It's just an additional level of oversight and accountability. So as long as you don't, like you say, don't get bogged down in bureaucracy and paralysis of process and all that crap, then we have an advantage over the conventional structure and so forth.
Yeah, I think it's also like there's a personnel limitation, right? Where there's only so many people who are willing to do any of this stuff. And sometimes it might make sense at this stage of, a skeleton crew kind of DCG and trust and board and all that stuff for a lot of the trust protectors to moonlight as board members. And then there's just random thought. I haven't thought it over too much, but to just kind of do that, and then once, let's just say the price is 3,000 a coin, oh no, and everything's going and big, and then DCG is a giant organization now, and all this stuff, then maybe it's time to like start filling in people into the trust protector spots, and then filling a completely different set of people into the board, and then you have a proper CEO of Dash Corp Group, and then the diff is running, and all that stuff runs more when stuff is booming. But in the meantime, you just sort of, for efficiency's sake, kind of combine the hats.
Right, we did just do that. We were trying to recruit external board members to the DCG board. It's been a long time. 2 straight classes of trust protectors have been trying to work on this. But to your point, Joel, it's difficult to recruit. When we found ourselves with an incomplete DCG board, we had no choice, in my opinion, but to take DCG staff and put 4 of the 5 members of the DCG board are employees of DCG. That's completely out of whack in terms of the optimal structure.
Yeah,
but,
of course.
But we had to, like to your point, it's a difficult recruiting environment. You can't not have directors. It's like legally, it's risk. The trustee gets wind of that, and we're in bad shape, right? And then they start talking about, oh, well, we obviously have to sunset the corporation because we're not meeting legal obligations. So, there's some
that would be terrible
risk there. And I'll say I took some heat. That's fine. I'm here to take heat. It's my job for having an all DCG board again, except me. I'm technically not any longer. But I'm obviously still a Dash insider. So even that is not really an independent board member. So, but the whole story is that, well, we just didn't have much choice. And by the way, the 4 people inside DCG are solid human beings, and they have a long-standing commitment to Dash and DCG. So it's not like we, put the board in bad hands. So anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's up and running again. There was a time when it was not up and running, and it was legally it was very risky.
When your trustee says,
people were critical that we filled it with internal people, but it was risky. We had to get through that, and we did, and it's up and running.
When your trustee says, "Hey, where's my annual financial statement?" but your CFO resigned, who was also a board member, by the way, how do you answer that question? You better have a good answer, because that trustee has some legal authority over your entity. And so anyway, we had to hustle, but we got it all stabilized. Yeah, for sure.
Well, to hit this other one, it's kind of a nice segue. Do you think it's healthy for the trust protectors to be so cozy with DCG?
I laughed when I read that on Reddit on Dash Page.
Yeah, and, just the way it's phrased is full of fun, kind of. But the root question is valid, sort of.
It is a valid question, and I'm glad they asked it. And I appreciate goofy questions and sometimes even troll questions. And the response was, trust me, we are not so cozy that you should be concerned. There have been heated debates and conflict, and it was resolved professionally. And so thank you for asking. No, we're not too cozy. And you got to be in there to know what's going on. So that's why I made him define cozy, right?
Yeah.
What I was smiling at was not the question. I think it's a great question. Absolutely, we need to have objectivity, independence, right? That's how you have accountability, right? You just can't have conflicts of interest, right? Or insularity or circularity, right? So that's where coziness is absolutely anathema to good governance. What I was smiling at was the fact that the question now in the community is, hey, are we too cozy? Remember a year ago, the question was, hey, what the hell are the trust protectors doing? They're lighting DCG on fire or they're inflaming tensions in the community. So it was the opposite of cozy. Exactly. A year later, it looks a little too cozy. So I think that means we've done our job in terms of settling things down a little bit.
By cozy, you mean a severe lack of drama that, oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. You're cozy with someone because the knife is no longer at their throat anymore, Yeah. And it's kind of funny, though, on a absolute tangent, right? But I view all information, even lies, as truthful to a certain extent, because they always reveal something about at least the person who's saying them and their motivations, or if they're lying about something, and that this is not to insinuate any of the above was a lie at all, but if they're lying about something, that their lie is constrained by the actual truth. And so when you have people criticizing, saying you guys are crazy firebrands, you guys are burning DCG to ground, and then versus you still are being criticized, right? As far as being too cozy now, at least the pendulum of that kind of reflects the reality of the position of, maybe you weren't too firebrandy back then, maybe you're not too cozy today, but at least there's either been a change in the way the trust is operated, the way the trust protectors have the relationship has at least changed, or it hasn't changed and haters are attacking it from two different angles, and the fact that they're not sticking to one angle means that you're right in the center where you need to be. So just some thoughts on how truthful things can be, regardless if you view them as gospel or not.
Yeah, but anyway, to the point of the question there, just so that it's clear, we are absolutely in favor of objectivity and accountability and independence, and the opposite of coziness. There's the age-old pearl of wisdom, right, which is that familiarity breeds contempt, and there's a reason that pearl of wisdom has been around for, I don't know, thousands of years. It's the stuff of Shakespeare and the Bible and so forth. You just have to be, it's human nature. You've just got to be careful about the kinds of arrangements you create. And so I'm looking for, I'll throw this out too. There was a suggestion at one point along the way that maybe all of the trust protectors or a larger number of trust protectors serve concurrently on the DCG board. And on this very topic, I didn't like it. because I just thought that it moves us too close, and too cozy, even if it's not coziness, but it's just too much closeness, a lack of separation, division of labor, independence, and objectivity. So I'm a big believer in that. So
Yeah, well, let's hit on this one here then. In the past, the Trust Protectors have served as an inside look into Dash Core Group, providing transparency. Sam Westrich has been much more of an open book, however, with complaints of DCG's opaqueness going away almost entirely, which, by the way, I'm just going to reflect on that fact a little bit. I have not known a single month since 2016 where people have not complained about the lack of communication between DCG and the community until now. Up until, I would say the last year. I guess it was 2022 basically. It's been like, I have not heard complaints about that largely. I've heard of every once in a while, what are you working on? When's Eva? I don't know, a deadline and stuff. But then I feel like all the actual information surrounding release dates has been communicated, even though there's no concrete-ish answer. But anyway, so finishing the rest of that is, do you think the change in the de facto, again, not de jure, because Sam's not the leader of DCG, but he's kind of the figurehead, the guy moving stuff forward. Do you think that change has made the Trust Protectors obsolete? Or if not, what work still remains to be done?
So this has several
short
answers.
Answer.
I'll give the speed answer. So why did it get better? Because the Trust Protectors worked their ass off and DCG worked their ass off to make it better. So if we stop working our ass off, guess what? It will get worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
I buy that.
The fundamental requirement of a healthy DCG has not been met, and thus the Trust Protectors are anything but obsolete. And I'm not saying that for personal reasons, because I am one. I don't care who's a Trust Protector, or if I don't get reelected or don't run again in March. It's the most important time. And anyway, that is to have a strong, healthy, independent board of directors for DCG. It's the number one job of the Trust Protectors. We don't have it yet. We have a good board. I vouch for it, and I took a lot of arrows for vouching for it. But it's not what a corporate board should be. And we're supposed to be governance innovators, right? So, I mean, if we're not even meeting the standards of the old world's standards of excellence for governance, then all this stuff we're saying about DAOs and DAO governance and all that just kind of becomes less meaningful. So we need to make sure we're at least meeting those standards, and then of course exceed them with the unique things that we bring in terms of having a DAO and governance and treasury and all of that. The other thing that I will say is that it has always bothered me as a leader of such as I am, the amount of work that Sam puts in being the face of the organization, because I know how damn busy he is, and I know how complicated platform is. So he's really in kind of a dual role. He acts like the chief communications officer. Sometimes CIOs do a lot of the external communication. It's really unforgiving, and everyone sees it. And sometimes it's hours a day. So yes, that transparency has definitely calmed things down. It's definitely an improvement. It is not the right way for DCG to be organized in terms of the division of labor, and it's really unfair for Sam. He'll never agree to that it's unfair, because he loves being transparent. He loves communicating. So that's all fine and great, but we really should fix that. So we should say thanks for Sam for fixing that and adding to that transparency, but we should really tune the organization a little bit more. The other thing I wanted to point out about the question is that in the course of all the disruption over the last calendar year, you could even go a year and a half if you back up to Bob Carroll's departure, and then Sam taking over a lot of reshuffling and rehiring and retraining under his watch, and then Ryan, Robert, and Glenn, right? In the course of all of that departure and disruption, a lot of the transparency things stalled. They went away. Like DCG was reporting regularly to the network every quarter. That stopped like a year ago, including like financial updates, even just the brass tacks financial updates to the network. Brian Foster in particular, in his new role, taking over a lot of Glenn's responsibilities and being a member of the board, has done yeoman's work on all of that. And we just got back to doing it again. But a lot of the transparency actually regressed because we just didn't have the time and the people and the process of talking to each other on a regular basis. Anyway, to the point of the question, it is great that Sam in particular has added to the transparency, but there's still a lot more that needs to be done on all of those things. Official transparency, regularly scheduled transparency, like reports to the network, including finances, the board in particular. So there's a ton of work to do. There's more work now than ever. And oh, by the way, when Evo is live, that work's going to increase yet more, right? So, yeah, notice I said when.
Yeah, not if, because we're making it eventually. So that reminds me of this little question about much of the TP's work focuses on Dash Core Group. Now, the Dash DAO Irrevocable Trust at least was pitched to us as a legal entity that allows the DAO to own property and assets. And almost the entirety of its focus has been on, as far as I know, all of its focus, although I could be misled there or have incomplete information, has focused on Dash Core Group. And, it's like the big gorilla in the room with the most like property and resources that we care about what happens to them. That makes sense. But is the trust ever going to, or how much merit or is there to the idea of the trust kind of putting its fingers in other pies or having other Dash funded organizations under the purview of the trust in some way, shape, or form? Does it even make sense? I don't know, just throwing that out there. Is the trust a DCG check and balance, or does it have other potential roles outside of DCG?
Yes. So for example,
side note, I love the way you answer questions, because even when there's a longer answer, you start with the conclusion first, so I know what the answer is. This is a constant dispute with the wife over this, where it's just like, hey, are you hungry? Well, I already ate. Yes, but are you hungry? Like, thank you for the additional information. I want to hear yes or no first. So thank you on a personal level for that.
So the immediate short answer is yes, and to give just the thumbnail sketch, DCG is really important, but Dash will grow and morph and evolve, and we can certainly imagine a time when the trust would do other things. But in the meantime, DCG is pretty important. So, we have to pay attention to that first.
There'd also just have to be some additional legal steps taken to do that, because again, the technical legal connection between the trust and the trust protectors in their role and DCG is ownership of shares, right? So that's a formal legal transaction that took place. So the question would be, if we created additional corporations, private corporations with shares, and we granted those shares, would we grant them into the same trust? Like the DIF has a not similar, but a somewhat similar structure, and there's an election by the network too, which is a really important connection. But the DIF's shares are not granted into the Dash DAO Irrevocable Trust, and thus don't have anything to do really directly with the trust protectors, right? So there'd have to be, this is if we chose, this gets to the question, like, do the trust protectors have a role in the Dash community beyond where we're actually legally obligated, which is to oversee and vote the shares of DCG as a corporation, and in particular control the board of directors, right? So the technical legal answer is no, But we could certainly expand that as a DAO and say, well, we want the trust protectors to be Dash protectors. That's what they call us, Dash trust protectors, because we are supposed to just be protecting that trust, and not Dash protectors generally. So we could expand it, but we might want to have multiple trust protectors, multiple trusts and multiple trust protector groups, right? So somewhere in there is the answer, but those are some of the things we have to think about.
Yeah.
And I would just throw out a potential awesome aspect is historically a problem with the Treasury was we could not make an agreement with somebody like a contractor with signed contracts with expectations and repercussions, because there was nobody on the Dash side that could sign that contract legally.
Yes.
So the best we could do would grant them some money and cross our fingers and hope we get a good outcome. And a lot of times we did not get a good outcome,
or an outcome.
Exactly. And so if we had a legal entity that can sign contracts, suddenly it's almost like a superpower that we could have actual contracts with actual consequences with people that are going to do stuff for Dash. Maybe that's the Dash trust.
So on that note, is this possible today, or is it feasible today?
Which, well, there's a technical legal question in here, which is, can we have an additional corporation grant its shares into the trust for oversight by the same trustee and trust protectors? I'm not a lawyer, of course. I don't think that the answer to that is yes, but that's just a specific question we would have to answer. If the answer is yes, well, then that gets interesting in that particular way, because now we could have multiple corporate share grants all under the same trust, all managed by the trust protectors. But probably what we'd have to do is then create parallel trusts, all within the Dash community and beholden to the masternode network. That's the ultimate arbiter, right? But then, so that'd be a nice problem to have too, because then are they just entirely independent? I mean, the diff and the diff supervisors and the trust protectors are totally independent. We just operate side by side. There's no formal connection. It's just kind of like, declaration of peace and agreement to trade together, and then it'd be peaceful coexistence kind of thing. So probably we have to do it that way. Additional parallel trusts and different sets of trust managers or trust supervisors, protectors, whatever we call it. But we have to ask a lawyer.
Yeah. I mean, this sounds like a reasonable thing to ask. One question on that stuff, though, is can the trust today enter into legal agreements with contractors and stuff? So, for example, this is actually like a real your phone watch is very antsy to be done with this, but
no, it's always antsy.
Yeah. So, for example, one thing I was thinking of, because I've been sort of talking, a lot of people in Dash have had a lot of ideas over the years, and there seems to have been two camps of ideas. One which is, let's find our random little side project, side hustle, promotional, whatever thing, and try to get it funded. And the other thing is, let's wait for DCG to do just about everything of substance. And over the last couple years, that DCG does everything kind of thing is sort of like split a little bit. And in so thinking, there's a bunch of things that a lot of us have brainstormed things that could help Dash. Part of it is like decision proposals, like the one Dash lower the fee to one Dash, or like the should we move away from privacy, or the HPMN debate, or like a bunch of stuff like that. But there's other stuff, like, for example, the big question is the bit license, right? Which is, unfortunately, I did not know just how complicating not having a specific regulatory thing in one of the 50 U.S. states would be for like all of Dash. And so it's pretty huge. DCG is probably never going to have a budget to just start hiring a law firm to be able to do that. However, it's possible that, especially if the Treasury were increased, to be honest, but like it's possible that someone else could broker such a deal, hire a law firm to get Dash a bit license, and then try to open all those doors. In which case, some random person submitting a proposal, that's not legally binding. But if such a person were to work with the trust, not with DCG, but with the trust, and say, can you sign all these agreements and documents with, say, a BitPay or a Coinbase or whatever, to just say, like, we're going to do this for you, you do this for us, and it's in writing.
Exactly.
And so then, is that something you guys could then do, right?
The potential is enormous. Part of the problem is the other half of the equation. What do the masternodes want us to do with regards to XYZ issue that could come up in the future, like a bit license and some law firm that wants to do that? And right now, it is clunky and inefficient and unreliable to determine the feeling of the masternode community. So, I'm hopeful that the 1- proposals will be another means to get, better at that. But, it's hard to do what the masternodes want if you can't talk to the masternodes as a group. And, most of them are anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, too, the only reason I'm bringing in all these technical details is because I've been up to my eyeballs in Dash DAO legal paperwork for the entire last quarter.
Of course.
Just because we had to dive deep and just really get things sorted out and refresh and so forth. So as far as the trust is concerned, technically speaking, it's the trustee that can enter into certain legal relationships, financial transactions, contracts, etc., at the advisement of the trust protectors, but it's the trustee specifically. So we actually don't sign set those sorts of things up ourselves. But it's amazing. This is where crypto is exciting and a blessing and a curse all at the same time. So the prospects are still really exciting. So Joel, this is interesting for you because you've been still living purely on crypto for some years now. Really? So so that's incredible. But the fact of the matter is that, like, almost immediately, you run into all kinds of problems if you don't have a legal corporation. Paying a staff,
which is why
right?
I do now since last year. I've been
there you go.
Hopefully teaching other people how to do the same.
A corporation of one, right? Some kind of legal structure. But when you have a distributed team that's spread out all over the world, oh my God, you'd be amazed. And very few people, even the purest of the diehards, right, can survive entirely on crypto. There's just so much fiat that's needed to live. So large majority of DCG staff is paid in fiat. To do that, you have to have bank accounts. To do that, you have to have a corporation, all this kind of stuff. So whether it's big things like a bit license or an exchange and a contract with an exchange, you just cannot do that with something like, say, the incubator, or just a pure Dash funded organization through the treasury system. Which I love, by the way, having those at our disposal, and the fact that we can have those kinds of things. But at some point, you're just frozen unless you have actual corporation, and then you have to have all these other accoutrements of the corporation too. So that's how all the pieces fit together.
Yeah, interesting.
Short answer, yes. Like what Troy started with. We'll finish with that. Yes, we can do all that. That was the details.
Yeah, that's good stuff. There was something else I wanted to go over in here, which was the Escalation protocol, which sounds pretty badass, but I don't know if it is. So, who wants to talk about? It was mentioned to me in a message about this Escalation protocol. So, you mind telling a little bit more about what it is and what it does?
So I have written up a little introductory piece, which will get published. And people that are familiar with the Dash community historically, it's kind of messy. And it was the first functional DAO, and it's still the longest running DAO in the history of cryptocurrency. So, we're literally inventing this stuff. So we didn't know how to resolve problems. The Treasury does give us some tools. We can vote on things. Is the vote binding? Depends on how you ask the question, and you have to just start defining terms. But part of the problem was it was a community. So anybody that had an email address for Ryan or Cott or anybody else on DCG, if they had a beef, they could just go hassle them. And sometimes they were perfectly reasonable questions and expectations, and sometimes they were not. Sometimes they were abusive and nasty and not helpful at all. And so DCG got pretty hesitant to respond to that because anybody could throw stuff at it. So the idea was conceived with the previous class of trust protectors, and Ash Francis put in a ton of work to make that process systematic. So if anybody has a problem with anybody else in the Dash ecosystem with DFOs, Dash funded organizations, there would be a protocol. So instead of just getting somebody's email address and telling them they're a cunt, they would have to go through proper channels. So that's what the protocol is. This escalation protocol is, what's your complaint? Well, you tell the trust protectors, and somebody investigates if the complaint is legitimate. If the complaint does check out, then it escalates to the next level. Then we investigate, is there substance to it? And it becomes civilized and professional and much less name calling and much less chaos. So, and I'm sure Patrick could flesh that out a little bit.
That's where the fun is, though.
The fun and dysfunctional. Yes,
sure.
Of course.
We won't take the fun out. People can still try that, but at some point, things have to be clear. It has to be something you can actually respond to. Can't be trolling and all of that. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just going to be mudslinging, right? Hey, if I shared a tab, does that disrupt the recording? Is that even possible?
You could. So you could do just a screen share to the rest of the hangout that we're in, the Jitsi hangout, and I think that would work.
Let me just try it. Tell me if you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Looks good.
Okay, so this is the escalation protocol, and this is some of the work that I have to say it again that Ash Francis just did yeoman's work on, and but all of the content was really hammered out by the last class, and the current class of protectors has continued on this. So it's a series of phases. I won't show the whole thing, but just to give people a sense of, we're going to publish all this on -trust.org, so that there's a single place to go to engage in this process, and then so that the rules are crystal clear, like Troy was describing. So issue submission, a zillion places where stuff can get submitted. Clarification, so we make sure that it's an actual addressable problem, not trolling, not some philosophical thing that can't really be addressed. And then it just moves through a series of steps, and it's all objective and clear to all the parties participating in the process. We have to validate the issue, do some detective work. Expanded it a little bit there. We have some discussion, and you can just kind of see, again, I won't go through the whole thing, but it goes all the way through to resolution. So that is a little bit more on that escalation protocol that we're working on. So coming soon.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a great source of clarity for like how things work. Also, a part of me can just see the weeping and gnashing of teeth from people who got correctly classified as trolling, but they're like, no, but it's for real, and there will be stuff like that. It is inevitable, but it's the price of the DAO, right?
Sure. So, but like, let's say that you're doing something that some people think is trolling, but you think is legit. What happens to it now, right? It dies somewhere in a forum, either in a Discord channel or at the Dash forum or somewhere. There's maybe back and forth, but that's as far as it goes. So all issues get responded to that come through this process. So this is better than that. Even if you don't win in the end, you still had your day in court, so to speak, right? And it was given a full hearing, and it goes through that entire process. And respectfully, so I use the term trolling, but we're never going to say, "Oh, get the hell out of here, you're a troll." We're of course going to be professional about it, but we may have to say,
Yeah,
"Sorry,
you're gonna say get
this
the
stampede
heck
became
out of here. You're a troll.
heck out of here." There you go.
And the ultimate technical goal would be a website where the person that submitted the issue can see at what stage it is, and the people that are involved, it's transparent. It's the definition of transparent. So everything is above board, everything is documented, and it would just solve a lot of chaos and drama, which is not that productive. However much fun that might be, it's just not that productive.
And it'd be especially cool if this was a platform DApp and all this was recorded on chain. And it's literally the complaint thing.
I know some developers. I got access, man. We're ready. Yeah, exactly. That's where it would go next, and that would be just really great and efficient. And obviously, it proves out platform and real world uses and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and honestly, like I get that that's like a specific trust protector escalation clause kind of thingy, escalation protocol. Sorry, but I think this would be fantastic for the actual governance side of things, right? Because,
absolutely.
And part of it is like I have to see, gotta be careful exactly how I say it, but Dash Central is not the most productive place in the world for engagement. And a lot of times you just get a lot of like sidetracked nonsense type stuff. And like to get what people are really thinking, it requires a more of an activist role as far as like a PO, a proposal owner, to like seek out master nodes and seek out their council and weed through stuff rather than just, this is what I want. What do you think? What do you guys think of this idea? And then there's just so much that's not like, I think that's good or I don't think that's good. There's so much like personal vendetta or like just like random like, argument about something else. And so obviously that whole stuff needs to be fixed, but at the very least, all this like discussion on this, I think could be monetized, right? And obviously not in like a annoying like paywall kind of way, but in a, if this is all on chain, not necessarily on L1, but if this is all, through state transitions, you update the state every time you do stuff, then there's like platform fees credits being thrown around here. And then you start to have a little bit more sustainability to the network rather than just the inflation-based thing that we have today. And then what happens if there's a value in that kind of a thing? And then you start building out like, I think that, maybe this is just a little too utopian right off the bat, but it'd be fun to create just a discussion protocol, make it like really smooth, and then start shopping out to all kinds of other companies and things like that are just like, look, if you plug into this DApp thing, especially if there's like a Thorchain or Maya, whatever integration, so if people can swap whatever their coins, it's kind of like a spam filter because people need some credits to engage, but it's also like a very good documented public kind of discussion forum thing. So that like this could be an interesting thing that kind of gets piloted with the escalation protocol, then turns into a DApp, and then kind of goes on from there. And then before you know it, maybe Dash's killer app wasn't digital cash, but it was enabling complaining online in the most streamlined way possible.
Or
you never know.
Governance in DAOs.
Yes.
So I always think
never
about
know. The market could decide something very different from what we envisioned.
And so I'll just circle back. The immediate problem is it would be nice if we had better governance within the DAO ecosystem and all the players, because it's kind of complicated and has not run in a really optimized way before. And we think this would be a really useful tool because it makes it transparent and objective, and there's very specific guidelines. But I think a lot of people are unaware of how many things have been innovated by Dash and then copied by other cryptocurrency projects. And there are a number of other DAOs, of which we are the oldest. And if this works, I imagine why wouldn't what I think they're going to be snapping it up, but hey, let's walk before we run.
Yeah. All right. So we're getting probably towards the end of this thing. Last call for live chat, comments, etc., etc. Just let me know anything else you missed. Ping on Discord, ping on the other stuff, and then as for you guys, start thinking of some parting thoughts.
Shout out to the community. The communication thing was so bad in so many directions for so long. It has taken a while to develop new habits. So I just want to encourage the community, if there's something you need to know, come ask me.
Yeah. Solar Guy on everything. And then I am Sigmund on everything. And yeah, that's some good stuff. One last little thing, because it's kind of current, and I've been monitoring all the channels, and a lot of discussion that should be happening in the live chat has been happening in some Discord channels on the subject of the Evo proposal question, which is kind of funny. And I kind of made fun of the triviality of this, but might as well bring it up because it is a governance type question. So the question was, should we use the name Evolution for the platform release? And that seems to be relatively straightforward. I think most people will probably say yes. It was kind of, Brian Taylor and his folks that moved to more calling it Dash platform, but like the OGs seem to like Evolution name. I like it, whatever. But the funny thing is, so you have a 1 Dash proposal fee, and tradition states that you submit a request for 1 Dash. It costs you 1 Dash, and you get the refund if the answer is yes. If the answer is no, you lose money, right? So this person put in a 2 Dash proposal question, and the logic behind that was quite interesting and like reasonable, which is like, well, it's a 50-50 chance of yes or no, rather than just I'm going to either recomp or lose money for the privilege of answering this question. I want to kind of like, if it's right, I will get compensated for my risk, it kind of thing. And it kind of makes sense, but then there's opened this giant can of worms of like, well, it's not a discussion, it's not a governance question if you ask for more than that, and therefore, blah, 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 I'm not going to vote for it. Oh, you should because of this. And like the question of like compensation for governance questions is kind of interesting, because I have seen in the heyday of 2017 era, some people ask governance questions and ask for more than the 5 Dash back. Like it was 5 Dash in the day. And just off the cuff, what do you guys think of? Do you think it should be you only ask for a refund, and if the correct answer to the question is no, you don't get the money back? It's like, well, that's the price of asking the DAO for questions? Or do you think they should ask for something, so if it is yes, that it compensates them for the potential risk? Or do you think that would skew things too much in the favor of wording a question so that they're more likely to get the money from it if it's yes? And anyway, brief touch on that can of worms before we wrap this up. And anyone else who has questions, make sure to jump it in.
So I'll throw in the speed answer. I haven't formed an opinion yet. This is a fantastic problem to have. We're having this conversation because no one has ever done this before, and this is a new governance tool. So I would encourage people to try it out and see what happens and see what doesn't work. And Dash is the innovator again.
Yeah. What do you think, Patrick?
I lean towards, I don't like, how would you describe this? Messing with the whole incentive-disincentive structure of human interaction. So like eliminating loser pays in the judicial system, for example. Mm-hmm. I think that was a huge mistake. Anyway, so this kind of gets to that kind of a thing. So I lean towards, yes, you should have risk of losing some Dash if you're not careful about what you put into the treasury system, the proposal system.
Interesting. Well, this is a definite interesting thing. Like the anti-spam filter keeps people from putting proposals in that are frivolous, right? Or too much. But that's the risk. The anti-spam filter is still there if people don't like it. I personally think you should just ask for the proposal feedback. And it's the cost of asking a network. And say we get $2,000 Dash and you have to spend $1,000 to ask the entire network a question. If you can't afford that and you can't crowdfund it, is it really that important of a question? If like it's no and you're out that much. But the big thing though, ultimately my opinion on this doesn't matter. I'd like to give not an opinion, but an observation, which is the free market decides. Whereas if you do a 1 Dash proposal fee, if you ask for 1 Dash back, people are very likely to consider that as a purely governance question and vote accordingly. And there might be some small bias towards the way who submitted it and the way they worded it and stuff, but mostly it's just the question. The higher that Dash amount requested back becomes, the less the decision plays into the actual decision in the text plays into their decision to vote yes or no. They might be like, yes, but screw this guy for asking for an extra Dash, so no. There might be some of that. And if you ask for 1,000 Dash, 0 Dash, no, because this is such an important question. No, because people just think you're after the money. And so in that continuum, the free market will decide. And I do think that the 1 Dash is the best way to get the purest answer. And if you start getting to 2 Dash, people might be a little, I think 2 Dash is the limit, right? If you start getting to 3 and above, people are like, you're hoping people answer this one way in order for you to profit. So therefore get out of here. That's my observational opinion on this, but the free market will decide. It will tell us.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree that having the market mechanism is a big deal. Very, very important. This gets to another important issue, though, which is that voting is way, way, way too hard. Voting with a Dash masternode is roughly equivalent to like ordering a mobile phone in parts and assembling it yourself and hoping it connects to the network and transfers voice and data, right? So,
but you know what's not difficult is voting through CrowdNode.
You're not wrong. And totally agree with Patrick. We have to streamline the process. One of the topics the trust protectors are interested in is we're trying to dredge up data to see if there is actually getting to be less and less voting, because that could become problematic. And part of that is just the structural problem of actually trying to vote. So we want to make the process easier and more inclusive. And it's a new tool, and we're still figuring out how to use it.
Yeah. All right. Well, this seems like a great time to wrap the whole thing up. Where can people find more about you as trust protectors, but also as individuals?
I'm on all the forums. Go ahead.
Well, starting with Trust Protector, sorry to interrupt, -trust.org, www.trust.org. That's the new site. So that's going to be our online home. It's going to expand a lot. So find us there, communicate with us there. And then, as far as our individual profiles, I think I am Sigmund and Solar Guy, we're everywhere. Twitter, Discord.
Yeah, so I'm on all the forums very regularly, so they can DM me. So we're not hard to get a hold of.
All of the above. All right, fantastic. Thanks for joining us, guys. Everyone, thanks for watching. There's going to be another episode of the Dash Podcast in 1 month. I'm actually on a schedule now. It used to be every 2 weeks, and then they're just like too much like redundancy, so I moved to every month, but then it was like, I don't know when per month. But now the 4th Friday of the month, the last Friday of the month, is a Dash Podcast. So look forward to it next time. I have not lined up the next people, but I have a few good ideas. And obviously, I'm going to try to do a When Evo around one of these things. So look forward to that. Now it's time for that glorious thing called the after party, where people just come in. This is like the real, it's funny. Some people have actually gotten salty about the after party. They're like, you think you got this exclusive, you're controlling all this power, you're super in club of, and it's like, well, it's literally just like a couple people after the podcast that stayed around. It's entirely an organic product, right? Where I did this podcast, some people like to hang around afterwards, and then it just ended up being like the power hobnob room or whatever, but also just a fun hangout. But anyway, if you want in on the after party, you go into the Dash Discord, the Dash Telegram channel, wherever, and ask, how do I get in the after party? Or ping me. You can DM me on Twitter. I don't care. Just ping me and say, how do I get in? And I'll let you guys in. And yeah, it'll be a good time. I will be in the after party. I got I have dinner and to deal with a flooded basement a little bit. So I'm not going to be entirely on the after party. But I will be in and out for sure. So look forward to that. Thanks everyone for watching. Let me see any last comments and questions. Peter says awesome. I'd like to end on awesome. See you guys around.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks for pulling together, Joel.
Anytime.
Appreciate it.